The game known as Prey has everything. It has a story, it has action, it has atmosphere, and it has giant needles that you jam into your eye socket. Seriously, just no! Before we get started, let me just say for transparency's sake that I received a review copy of this game. I did not buy it. I was sent a copy by a PR firm who represents the developers, so keep that in mind when you listen to my opinions. Having said that, what is Prey? I want to keep this spoiler free, so it's going to be a little difficult to describe this in full detail. However, the Steam page tags this as a sci-fi action space single player FPS game, but that's not particularly descriptive. If you're an old timer like me or you like retro games, the closest I could compare this to would be a game like System Shock. For everybody else, I think the nearest comparison would be something like Deus Ex meets Alien Isolation, or perhaps Half-Life. It's got that kind of vibe. It's not a horror game, but it does have a kind of creepy, almost Soma-esque vibe to it. It's not a spoiler to tell you that the game is set in 2032 on a space station that orbits the moon, because that's pretty much in the first sentence of the description on the Steam page. More than that, I would prefer not to say. I would like to leave you in suspense if you've not played the game, because the story is good. It's one of the strong points for this game. It's the sort of story where you have to discover it as you go. I mean, yes, you will get it explained at the end if you want to do that, if you just want to skip all the other information, but I think you will be missing out a big part of this game's appeal, and indeed a lot of the information, because much of the story can be found out through scavenging around for audio logs, notes, and even by reading other people's emails. You spend a lot of time doing that actually. If you're curious as to what is going on, reading other people's emails is what this game is about. This game actually gives you a lot of options to skip entire areas. You can use a lot of different ways to get places, like climbing over them and just, sneaking past them. But honestly, you really do want to kind of scour the place and find all the notes, at least in my opinion. For me, patching together this picture of the station and the people that were on it, listening to their audio logs, reading their emails, it really made me feel like I was understanding what was going on. Although that does bring up the idea of playstyles. You can actually play this game a variety of different ways. You can be very gung-ho and run in all guns blazing. You can sneak, you can climb, you can use hacking, engineering, and believe it or not, there are a lot of other abilities and tools that you will have access to solve pretty much every problem. There's no right way to play this game, and there's no wrong way. Every single thing you face, every problem you have, you can solve a variety of different ways. And you could do multiple playthroughs if you wanted, doing different styles, or like I did, you could do one playthrough and just try every single style. This game kind of allows you to play around and experiment. It is a lot of fun in that respect. There is a character build system. You absorb abilities using these neuromods. I'm not going to explain them in great detail, but you can actually install skills and abilities into your brain. It's kind of cool and kind of gruesome because it does involve sticking needles into your eye socket. At the start of the game, you get access to abilities like security, science, and engineering. Security is like your gun skills, your running, climbing skills. You've got science, which is things like hacking and medical skills. And you've got engineering, which is fixing things, repairing your suit, and upgrading your weapons. However, don't get too wrapped up with planning one particular build in the early stages, as I did, because at a fairly early stage, about a quarter of the way through the game latest, you do get access to some new abilities, to some new build trees, and they make the game even more interesting, and you're probably going to want to try some of them. The combat mechanics are very solid. They are kind of difficult at the start when you are in the early stages if you're playing on something like Nightmare difficulty, but it does get progressively easier. However, it's never frustrating really. I mean, it can be tough and you may start finding interesting ways to engage with the enemies, but honestly there's a feeling of progression. There's a feeling that you can do this if you just put your mind to it. A lot of it comes down to confidence and getting to grips with the different things you're going to be fighting and the different tools you have available. And one thing that did surprise me was the movement mechanics. They are actually really good. It reminded me far more of a stealth game like Dishonored than an FPS game. Once you get to grips with it, and especially if you put some points into those particular abilities, you really do get a lot of fairly good parkour skills. You can climb, you can jump, you can even slide, although that's something I just did not do in this game. There's combat sliding as well, and it's just something I did not try out. I might do another quick playthrough where I do something like that, a very heavily focused combat build with, a lot of movement added. But in the end, what drives this game, what makes this game so good in my opinion, is the atmosphere and the story. The atmosphere is great. You go through a lot of different areas and each one feels a little different, but there's always this constant creepy vibe, this feeling of being hunted. It's really intense and an awful lot of fun. And as I've said, the story is fascinating. I'm not going to talk about the ending because that will require spoilers. I'm going to do a completely separate video where I discuss the ending and my feelings about it, but I'll probably release that once my Let's Play has finished. I've not finished posting all of the videos yet. Oh, and if you're watching my Let's Play but you've not played the game yourself, I can highly recommend you do so. You should probably stop watching those videos now, get the game for yourself and experience it. This is a game I really did love. This is one of my favourite games this year. However, having said that, there are a few minor issues. It's nothing major, but I should mention them. I'm going to start with the biggest, and that is the fact that the game does have a problem with crash to desktop. I probably crashed maybe 15 times, maybe more actually. It could have been closer to 20. It happened quite a lot when I was changing areas, but it even happened a few times in between areas. And there were a few times I had to revisit some places, do things I'd already done just to recover what I had lost. And there were a few instances where the frame rate would suddenly drop quite dramatically, but those were always fixed by saving and reloading the game. That would pretty much fix it every time. Not a big deal. Another minor gripe was the shotgun. A lot of games have this tendency to balance shotguns by making them short range, but this game made them so even at short range they were completely useless. Pretty much anything beyond 10 meters would just, forget it. You might as well wave at them. In fact, sometimes I simply use the shotgun as a way to get their attention, to get them to come towards me into a trap that I'd set. I'd say anything over 5 meters, you're really not effective. Don't think of the shotgun as a ranged weapon. Think of it as a lance that goes bang. It really is just a melee weapon with a lot of good reach. It kind of annoys me because I don't like it when they make shotguns so ridiculously short range in most games, but this game does take it to the point of ridiculousness. The funny thing is, they could have avoided this by not having a shotgun and having a space weapon, some new weapon we've never thought of that had an excuse for only having an effective range of 5 meters, and I wouldn't have thought twice about it. But it looked like a shotgun, it felt like a shotgun, it sounded like a shotgun, it behaved like a spear that you poked people with. Sinking to the really small and almost insignificant things. There was one thing that did kind of annoy me, and that was the floating quest markers. The game has this marker that appears whilst you're playing in first person mode that tells you where you need to go, and I find those things unbelievably irritating. I almost always switch them off in games. You can do that in this game, but you have to do it by deselecting the quest in the journal, and that removes the marker from the map. And I kind of like the markers on the maps because I can plan my route, or I can say, okay, I need to go to that room, and then I close the map and I move on. I do not like having the marker floating around. It's just one of those things that irritates me. It may not irritate you, and if so, this is not going to be a problem. I just had this constant urge to shoot it, actually. And on a sort of related note, the computer screens, which were very, very cool. You could interact with computers in real time, and it felt very intense and slightly more dangerous than normal. You didn't get like time freezing and the computer would fill your screen, although you did actually have that option. But you could use them in real time with the activate key. The only problem is, it was so damned realistic, I found myself wanting to use the mouse as I would normally use, like the scroll wheel to scroll text, the left and right mouse buttons to select things, only that would shoot. And I ended up shooting the screen a few times. It was a habit that was kind of hard to kick. It would have been nice if those particular keys changed when you were close enough to a screen to interact with it, so that I didn't smash the screens with a wrench or shoot them with a shotgun quite as often as I did. Oh, and do not give the player a turret that he can carry, deploy, upgrade and fix, and give him a wrench, and have that wrench not fix, repair and upgrade said turret. That's just evil. Now, as you can probably tell, these complaints are very minor, bordering on the trivial, with the possible exception of the crash issue. That's the only one I would say would affect your game. The rest were so minor, I only mention them because I think they're the sort of things I would like to see improved if there was a Prey 2. Honestly, none of those things would stop me recommending this game. Even the crash issue would not stop me recommending this game. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm so glad I played it. And honestly, I would like to see more of this sort of game.